Welcome to Brampton Focus. You know, the 2014 election results saw the Liberals return to power, and one seat that was left vacant was in Brampton-Springdale. My name is Michael A. Charbon. My next guest is Harinder Malhi, the MPP for Brampton-Springdale, right here on Brampton Focus. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. I'm joined by Ms. Harinder Malhi, who is the representative from the Bramalea-Gore region for our Minister of Provincial Parliament, and also Mr. Cashin Joseph joining us from Brampton Focus. Both of you, welcome. Harinder, I wanted to talk to you first of all. In 2014, you took over Linda Jeffrey's old seat. You were basically a French fry thrown into provincial government. Now 2 years running, you're a seasoned politician, as many would say. Is there one thing that sticks out that you didn't realize was involved in the job?
I think I'm comfortable with the job. I think that it was well expected. As you've said, I come from a background of politics, so I knew what the job entailed. I knew what I was jumping into head first. I mean, there's always policy questions and things that change. And it's a learning curve for everybody who is new to the game. And I think I'm learning along the way.
It was wonderful to watch you win the election. I had the fortunate opportunity to host the elections. Gurbert Singh Malhi, your father was 18 years in politics. So you come from, as one would say, a pedigree of politics. Is there one thing that you want to get changed or one thing that you want to achieve that you have either not yet achieved or have achieved in your pursuit to service your Bramalea-Gore constituents?
I'm going to just let you know that's actually Brampton-Springdale. My riding is Brampton-Springdale. So sorry about that. I should have let you know a little bit earlier, but it was my dad's riding that was Bramalea-Gore-Malton.
That's
right. Where we're going with that. But there's a number of things that we want to continue to pursue, and as a government that we need to see here in Brampton. But as an individual, something that I heard at the doors, definitely there's things that I want to pursue on that angle as well. One of them being precarious employment in Brampton. And just a couple months back, I did introduce my private member's bill on precarious employment and changes that need to be made. This is one of the biggest issues that we heard while door knocking in our community. And we were back door knocking actually over the summer because I do want to maintain strong relationships with my community, and I want to be able to go out time and time again every summer and actually knock on some doors, get to know how the community is feeling, what their asks are. And we heard again about precarious employment. So I did.
So give us a definition of what precarious employment is so the folks at home can understand. I mean, that is a nebulous term, if you wish. How would you define that?
It's actually more temporary employment through the temporary agencies. It's our most vulnerable workers, and how companies have started filling long-term needs with temporary staffing agencies. People are not able to find that full-time employment. And what we wanted to talk about in my private member's bill that I introduced which has passed first reading and passed the second reading and is in committee at the committee stage now, where it'll be reviewed again. And I've talked to our Minister of Labour, Kevin Flynn, who's just in our riding last week to do a Labour town hall. It talks about three separate improvements that we'd like to make to agency employment. So we want to ensure that 75% of a company's workforce is built on permanent employment, not being staffed through temporary agencies. We want to ensure that temporary agencies are to fill temporary employment needs, whether they be seasonal, whether they be for contract positions, but it's not a full-time solution. The second portion of it is the wages that the temporary employees are making in comparison to full-time employees, because they're not getting paid the same amount of money for the same amount of work. That's a big concern for us. My private member's bill talks about having them being paid at least 80% of what a temporary agency is charging the employer, and we'd like to see 80% of that going to the actual employee. I understand some would say, why not 100%? But if somebody is using a temporary agency for their staffing needs, we have to respect that it has to be sustainable for them, because they are providing the human resources services to that company, and they have to be able to pay their bills and sustain an environment where they can stay in business and continue to provide the services that they provide.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, I mean, with this precarious employment, how come all of a sudden all these temporary agencies all of a sudden just came up? I think Randstad is one of them. They just built up right away, and their sales are very high. Why is these employers having a hard time trying to find these employees, and they're just going always to the temporary agencies?
I think it cuts down on their costs. It's easier for them to go to an agency because the agency is like a bank. Now, as we said, I don't know if they've come up all of a sudden. I think it's something that's been developing over the last few years, and I know that you had attended our town hall earlier this week where Minister Flynn had addressed that there's been 20 years since we've looked at the Employment Standards Act. Yeah. The work world has changed, and we need to address those changes. We are in the middle of a review of our Employment Standards Act to see what changes we need to take going forward, and we're doing consultations and reviews, and he is expecting a report shortly where we'll have to take a look at it and go from there on recommendations and see how we wish to further pursue.
Okay. So minimum wage is one of those things that's been up as well. I mean, some would say minimum wage for a part-time job should be minimum wage. Others are saying that minimum wage is not enough. What's your position on that, particularly with precarious employment?
I think minimum wage, our government has been committed to raising minimum wage since we've been elected, and we're going to continue to maintain that at the cost of living. As the cost of living increases, we've committed to raising minimum wage. But we also need to understand that we have to make this, it has to be a fair raise. It has to be slow and steady. We can't expect sudden increases because it's hard for businesses to sustain that.
Well, the statistics support that 80% of employment in Canada is supported by independent business. So if you cut independent businesses' margin in increasing minimum wage, some would say that some of those minimum wage jobs were never meant to be full-time jobs, and that's where we're getting a disconnect.
Well, with those jobs, it's just, I can agree with you. Those are part-time jobs, but they're filling them through full-time staffing needs. I don't think that's what my bill is addressing. It's more precarious employment in terms of when we have people working somewhere for 5 years as a temporary employee, so that they're not seeing the benefits that they need to see. Those are the concerns. I can understand if you're looking at a retail position or a position of that sort where part-time employment is feasible, and those things will continue. I mean, we've all done it. I worked retail as a student. We have many students who do work retail. Mm-hmm. Those are part-time positions. That's not what we're targeting, or that's not what I'm looking at with this bill. I'm looking at the full-time jobs that are going through these agencies and remaining that way. When
we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your sexual harassment plan, and we got a bunch of other topics. You're watching Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You're watching Harinder Malhi from Springdale and Mr. Cashin Joseph. Back with more right after this. And welcome back to Brampton Focus. We're joined today by Ms. Harinder Malhi from Brampton-Springdale, representing our Ministry of Parliament with the Liberals, and also Cashin Joseph from Brampton Focus. Some of the things you've been very active in your community. We've gone out several times and seen you interact. Your door knocking and your speaking to your constituents has been an important part. How much of a good feeling is it when you get to touch your constituents and get to make things happen for them, because you're truly doing what a politician should do?
Thank you. Well, I think that's one of the most important things for me, is to find that time to have these town halls and host different events where you give people the forum to come out and discuss their issues, where you're going out to them. We try to door knock, as I said, as much as we can, but we probably don't get to every door every year. So these forums are for the public, so that I have a better understanding of what it is that they're looking for from me, what their concerns are. So in the recent months, we've hosted a town hall with Minister Nakvi, who's the Minister of Correctional Services and Community Safety. We've also hosted a town hall with Minister Flynn just last week on labor issues, where we had a lot of...
Which was well attended, by the way.
Very well attended. attended. We had one earlier this summer with Minister Del Duca on transportation and our transportation needs, which also was well attended. We hosted an open house in our office to welcome people, to let them know where we are. I really do find that grassroots politics is the most important thing. It's your constituents.
Well, that's what got you elected.
Yes.
It was that grassroots politics.
Yes.
Now, you were just recently at Sheridan College. You were presenting a plan for sexual harassment and a job action plan, which is very close to your heart, and the Liberal government provincially. Tell our folks at home a little bit about what that initiative entails.
Our sexual violence and harassment action plan is something that we're very serious about pursuing. There's no tolerance in Ontario for violence against women, sexual violence and harassment of any sort. And we're working towards a community and a province where everyone feels safe in their homes, at schools, on campuses, and in their workplaces. So this is just in addition to that. We have introduced new legislation that, if passed, would actually be making it safer. We also introduced a plan called It's Never Okay. Our Premier introduced it last year on March the 6th, which is International Women's Day. And It's Never Okay, where we focused on the bystander. And it came with a hashtag Who Will You Help? To support those individuals in need, to support our vulnerable victims so that they can feel safe coming out and telling their story, sharing their experiences, and so we can support them to move forward in their lives. This legislation builds on that plan. It talks about a number of different things. One is something that Minister Nackby actually tried to introduce earlier as his private member's bill, but now we went forward with it. It's when you're stuck in a lease where you may be in that situation, where women may be in a situation that they can't get out of their lease because, but they're in a situation of sexual violence and harassment. It's to help them get out of their lease and not have to worry. That's one of the focuses of this. The second is safer campuses for our students. I think that's important to everybody. We have said that all schools, post-secondary institutions, will require introducing a sexual violence and harassment action plan, a standalone plan for each college. We wanted to go with a standalone plan because every college, every university, depending on the community, the size, the dynamic, the demographics of it has different needs, and we wanted to ensure that those needs were met. These plans that we're looking at, we would also like them to have student input. It's important that the students feel safe and we hear their voice. So,
well, with a daughter who recently graduated from York University, those kind of considerations are close to many people's hearts, parents' hearts, as well as students.
I had a question when you're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. There was an article I read on the Toronto Star recently. It said most of the sexual harassment issues come up in a lot of the government agencies compared to private corporations and companies. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, if you have something to say about that.
I think, right, as I said earlier, we want to ensure that every workplace is safe and every Ontarian feels safe, no matter whether they're at work, school. So all of this legislation will be applicable, whether it be a private industry or whether it be in the public sector. Now, we've also removed the 2-year limitation for civil reporting, because we know how hard it is for survivors to come out and share their experience, how long it may take them to heal. Their sexual violence and harassment is underreported right now, and we want to ensure that we're giving people enough time to come and report their experience.
And what kind of teeth is this legislation going to have?
In terms of?
In terms of repercussion. I mean, in some instances, we've seen people who have been accused, and then after, when we found out that the accusations were not correct, their reputation was still slandered. What kind of teeth are you going to have in this to ensure that there's no false reporting, and if it is justified, what kind of repercussions or punishment that person or organization will receive?
That's actually a very interesting perspective and an interesting way to look at it. As right now we are survivor focused, and we want to ensure that the survivor is protected. Now, that does take us into the legal grounds of it. I think that if there's false reporting, that it'll be more on the judicial system and how the courts look at it at that point. We want to ensure that all of those people who are not feeling safe right now are feeling safe, and they have the ability to report. For campuses, again, they have safe campuses where they can go to school.
They have emergency buttons, they have emergency stations. How are you, with just about a minute left in this segment, how are you identifying this? How are you identifying sexual harassment? Are you using existing templates? Are you adding to them? Definition-wise.
Definition-wise, we do have a definition which has been focused on. We are using both existing and we've taken input. We've traveled the province on this bill. I've been on committee where we've traveled the province. We've been in Peterborough, London, Toronto. We've taken deputations. We've listened to the public perception from different stakeholders, whether they be organizations, whether they be student groups, faculty from different schools. So we are taking all of that into consideration as we go into our line-by-line study of the bill, and we'll be taking suggestions. One of the major suggestions that came up while we were traveling was that we had focused on a 3-year review of the bill at these post-secondary sites, but students suggested that it be a 2-year review because their longevity at the school is now done. After 3 years, they may not be there. So something that we'll be taking under consideration.
Well, I think with your track record of interacting with your community and having the town halls, I think you're going to get some good reaction. When we return with our final segment, we're going to talk a little bit about carding and look forward to see what Harinder Malhi looks forward to as she's concluding as a Brampton-Springdale. You're watching Brampton Focus. My name is Michael Charbon. We'll be back with lots more discussion right after this. And welcome back to Brampton Focus, our final segment. We're joined today by Harinder Malhi, who's from Brampton-Springdale, and also Mr. Cashin Joseph from Brampton Focus. When we left, one of the topics that we wanted to talk about, and particularly this being our last segment, we wanted to talk about carding. As of late, Amrit Singh Elawali has replaced the former police commissioner for the region of Peel, and now carding has become an issue again. I wanted to take a moment and get your input on that from a provincial standpoint. Where do you sit from a perspective of carding?
First and foremost, I want to take an opportunity while we're here, since you did mention Mr. Elawali's appointment, I'm congratulating him. I think he's going to make a great chair of the board, and I look forward to working with him going forward. Now, carding as a province, we've had a couple of town halls. We've had a couple of opportunities for Minister Naqvi to come out here and discuss. We actually hosted a town hall earlier on this year, and then we did a media roundtable for our ethnic media groups so that Minister Naqvi could come and speak about carding. Now, we as a government are against stops for no reason at all at any given way. The proposed regulations that we are talking about are actually going to be a protection of human rights that we take very seriously, and we have zero tolerance for racism or gender-based or any gender identity or gender expression or sexual orientation-based stops. So we do believe that there needs to be a stop to these to the random stopping, and if they are stopped, I think that Minister Naqvi's introduced that. Well, the legislation introduced is that we can't gather information. An individual is free not to provide the information. They can decline providing the information to the police officer, and if this legislation goes forward.
But carding is a tool the police which uses it, and which they say is very helpful for them to solve crimes and solve a lot of the problems in our community. And carding also takes place in a lot of the high crime areas in our community. So would you not agree to that?
We are strongly, I know that's what the police has said, but at this point our government's taking a stand to say that it's not, we also can't be discriminating, and it is a human rights issue. We want to be able to protect that human right, that people should not feel alienated or targeted in any way based upon race, gender, age, and we need to ensure that everybody feels equal and safe. So unless there's, we're not saying that there should be no investigation, but there needs to be reason to it.
Okay, but my question is, just say for example, we'll take the race away, the discrimination part away, and if they had some information, some statistics which shows certain people are committing crime, a certain race is committing crime, and all this stuff, like if they had it, do you think that would help the situation of carding?
Well, I think if I may just jump in, Cashin brings in a great point in that we do not have any race-based statistics relating to crime. And if we're talking about carding from a perspective of particular minorities saying that they're being targeted, police are using this as a tool, you really have two perspectives. Are you saying that our police are specifically being racist in the way that they're targeting people because they're carding them? Or is this a tool which is something which is upsetting? I mean, there's a lot of hair on this tennis ball, if you wish. I don't think anybody wants to have racism. I mean, that's not it. But it is a tool that the police are using.
And as I've said, arbitrary stops are something that we are not in favor of, because a number of people are feeling targeted, and we want to avoid that. It's a human right, and human rights come first. We want to be able to protect that human right.
Okay, with 3 minutes left, I want to give you an opportunity to talk to the folks at home. I mean, this 2014, you were elected, we're 2016 now. Give our folks a little bit of perspective of what they have to look forward to. I mean, you've got a lot of things on your plate. You're very active in your community. What can we look forward to for the Brampton-Springdale riding from you?
I think that we're all very excited about a number of initiatives that our government itself is taking on. As you know, Brampton should be seeing our second facility as the Peel Memorial site opening up in the next little while. The 410 expansion should be ready to go. We are working our way actively towards all-day two-way GO train service in Brampton. We also are looking at, we did groundbreak on a new Erin Oak Centre for that families with children with special needs are going to be utilizing. So Brampton's seen a number of great things that our government has brought to the table. Going forward, we hope to continue to grow in these things. We hope to build on our GO Transit commitment. We hope that we know that the highway will be done. We know that the healthcare facility will be done. I look forward to continuing to work with our local hospital and the team there to provide optimum healthcare services. Brampton Civic is one of the busiest hospitals in the country right now, and we're going to continue to focus and find efficiencies and work with the team. They're doing a wonderful job out there, and we want to continue that. We're also going to be on a lighter note. We're looking at International Women's Day is around the corner.
Right.
I look forward to having different types of celebrations within the community and joining the community to recognize all of the great things that women have contributed to our country, to our province, and how we can continue to contribute. As well, we're looking at mental health focus. That's another issue that's very near and dear to me. So hopefully we can host a mental health seminar. As we've done in the past, we did start some new things last year. We had a public service fair that will continue to, that'll become an annual
With about
event.
a minute left, I just want to get a quick comment from you, the LRT. I mean, I just heard about the great proposals with regards to transportation. Can you just give me a 30-second, what happened with the LRT in Brampton? Good, bad, ugly, or indifferent?
I do think that it was the city's decision. The province had made the money available with the LRT, and we're ready to support it now. I don't want to really comment on anything.
Will you come back on another time and talk to us about the LRT?
Possibly.
Possibly. Harinder Malhi, thank you so much for being with us from Brampton-Springdale. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Also, thank you to Cashin Joseph from Brampton Focus. My name is Michael A. Charbon. We appreciate you tuning in. It's topics like this and people like Harinder Malhi that make Brampton such a great city. Thanks so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.